It was an early winter morning in Seattle, the kind where fog pressed low over the streets and every breath turned to pale mist. The pavement still gleamed from the night's rain, and the city felt suspended between sleep and the coming rush. Leah Monroe stood at the curb outside a worn, budget motel tucked behind a corner gas station. Her blonde hair was scraped into a loose bun, damp strands clinging to her cheeks. In one hand, she clutched a fraying canvas tote. In the other, the small, cold fingers of her 5-year-old daughter. Mia, in a light pink dress layered over a white sweater and thick gray tights, shifted from foot to foot, shoes whispering on the damp concrete as she tried to keep warm. Leah checked her phone. "Your Uber has arrived." Relief flooded her. The interview was in 40 minutes. If she got this job, maybe, finally, things would start turning. A sleek black SUV slid to a smooth stop a few feet away. It looked foreign in this part of town. Shiny, spotless, dark windows reflecting the weak morning light. She didn't hesitate. Leah hurried forward, opened the back door, and gave the driver a rushed, apologetic smile. "Hi, sorry I'm a bit late." "Thanks for waiting," she said, slightly breathless as she helped Mia climb into the back seat. "Can you take us to 17th and Madison?" The man in the driver's seat turned slightly. He wore a crisp white shirt with the top button undone. A navy blazer rested neatly on the passenger seat. Dark hair, short and a little tousled, framed a calm, unreadable face. "Of course," he said, voice low and smooth. "Please buckle up." Leah nodded, fastening Mia's belt, then her own. The SUV eased into traffic. Mia chattered quietly about the fog, about the ducks they'd seen earlier near the motel, and whether the building they were going to might have pink doors. Leah answered with soft murmurs, occasionally digging in her tote to hand over a half-wrapped granola bar. The driver watched them now and then in the rearview mirror. His gaze lingered, not judgmental but curious. He noticed how Mia leaned against her mother's side, fingers twisting a lock of Leah's hair. At a red light, he reached behind his seat without a word, pulled out a small cream-colored blanket, and held it back to Leah, eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "She looks like she needs it," he said simply. Leah blinked, surprised. "Oh, thank you," she murmured, wrapping the blanket around Mia, who curled closer and smiled sleepily. "That's very kind." He only nodded and drove on. As the city thickened around them, more traffic, taller buildings, the quiet inside the car turned easy. The hum of the engine, Mia's soft breathing, the click of the turn signal formed a steady rhythm. Leah stared out the window, mind spinning ahead to the interview. At another stoplight, she muttered more to herself than to him. "I really hope this interview works out. I need this." "Big day?" he asked gently, eyes on the road. She hesitated before answering. "Yeah, I've been trying to find something stable. Something that lets me take care of my daughter properly." Her voice tightened. "It's been a lot lately." He didn't offer advice or pity, just gave a slow nod. Something flickered behind his calm expression, recognition maybe. A few minutes later, the SUV pulled up in front of a tall glass office tower. The building shimmered under the gray sky, its lobby alive with suits and briefcases and purpose. Leah's stomach knotted. She glanced at her thrift store skirt and second-hand blouse, smoothed Mia's hair, and drew a steadying breath. She opened the door. "Thank you again," she said with a grateful smile. "You're the kindest Uber driver I've ever had." The man let out a quiet laugh, one hand relaxed on the wheel. He didn't correct her, just dipped his head. Leah shut the door. Mia slipped her small hand into hers, and the two of them walked toward the revolving doors, their figures dwarfed by glass and steel. In the driver's seat, Julian Hartwell watched until the doors closed behind them. His gaze lingered, thoughtful, unexpectedly tender. Then he turned the key and pulled away from the curb. The moment Leah stepped into the lobby, she felt like she'd crossed into another world. Marble floors gleamed like still water. Metal and glass caught the light in clean lines. Minimalist art hung on the walls. The air was full of soft elevator chimes and the staccato of expensive heels. Mia squeezed her hand, eyes wide. "It looks like a shiny castle," she whispered. Leah forced a faint smile, though her palms were damp. She could feel people looking, guards, receptionists, staff in perfect suits. Eyes flicking to her worn canvas tote, to the child at her side. She approached the reception desk. "Excuse me," the receptionist said sharply, gaze dropping to Mia. Children aren't allowed past the lobby. You cannot bring her to the interview. Leia's breath caught. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't have anyone to watch her this morning. I was hoping she could just stay with me. She'll be quiet, I promise. 15 minutes, that's all I'm asking. A woman in a navy skirt suit, HR, by the look of the clipboard, walked over already frowning. Miss Monroe, she said flatly, glancing at the paperwork. We expect a certain level of professionalism from candidates. This is highly irregular. Bringing a child to an interview, it doesn't make a good first impression. It will factor into our evaluation. Heat rushed to Leia's face. She tightened her hold on Mia and hugged her folder to her chest. Around them, people watched with polite discomfort, some with open disapproval. Humiliation burned. She started to turn away, ready to leave with her head down, when a familiar deep voice cut through the lobby. I'll allow it. The room fell quiet. Every head turned. Leia froze. Slowly she spun around. The man from the SUV stood a few feet away, the calm stranger who had handed her a blanket and driven her across the city. Only now he seemed to fill the space differently. Composed, authoritative. The staff straightened. A few nodded with obvious respect. Her driver. Her what? Mia tugged her sleeve and whispered just loud enough. Mommy, why is the Uber driver wearing a fancy suit now? Leia felt the ground tilt. The receptionist leaned toward her, voice low but audible. That's Mr. Julian Hartwell, our new CEO. Leia almost dropped her folder. Her knees went weak. Every word she'd said in the car, thanking him like a hired driver, flashed through her mind. Julian stepped forward, gave HR a small nod to stand down, then turned to Leia with the same calm expression she'd seen in the rearview mirror. Miss Monroe, he said, tone firm but not unkind. I look forward to hearing more about your experience. Please come in. I didn't know. I thought, she stammered. I'm so sorry. There's no need to apologize, he replied gently. I was clearing my head before a long day. I suppose I did become a driver for a moment. There was no mockery in his voice, only sincerity, and something unexpectedly soft. HR fell silent. The receptionist looked down. No one quite knew what to say. Julian gave Mia a brief, reassuring nod, then gestured toward the hallway. This way. Leia swallowed hard, tightened her grip on Mia's hand, and followed him to the elevators, her pulse thundering. In the mirrored steel interior, their reflections stood side by side. Julian composed, Mia swinging her legs and humming. Leia tense and flushed, staring at the floor numbers. You stepped into a luxury car, Julian said quietly, watching her reflection instead of her face. Not knowing exactly where it would take you. But you got in anyway. She turned puzzled. He added softer. A little like this interview. A faint, unwilling smile touched her lips before reality rushed back in. This was already far more complicated than she'd bargained for. The interview room was all glass and angles, white walls, a long dark table, black chairs lined with precision. 3 people waited, 2 from HR and at the head Julian Hartwell. He was seated when she entered, flipping through a folder. When he looked up, their eyes met briefly. His face was calm, professional, giving nothing away. Miss Monroe, the older HR woman said, adjusting her glasses. Please sit. First, Leia led Mia to a cushioned bench in the corner. Stay here, sweetheart. Be quiet, okay? She whispered. Mia nodded solemnly, pink dress smoothing around her legs as she sat, stuffed rabbit clutched in hand. Leia took a seat opposite the panel. Her nerves hummed under her skin. Your resume shows frequent job changes. One interviewer began. Can you explain that? Yes, Leia said, steadying her voice. Some positions were temporary. Others, I had to leave because of childcare conflicts. But I've always worked. I've waitressed, done reception, anything I could find. And your administrative experience? Another asked. We need strong organizational and communication skills. I worked at a small accounting firm for 10 months, she answered. Handled scheduling, correspondence, filing, data entry, client check-ins. Why did that role end? The HR woman pressed. The business closed, Leia whispered. The slight downturn of the woman's mouth wasn't hostile, but it wasn't encouraging either. Julian stayed quiet, arms folded lightly, letting his team lead. He watched Leah closely, but his expression remained neutral. Multiple employment gaps, the HR manager continued. Limited formal education. Modest skill set on paper. Why should we choose you over more qualified candidates? Silence fell. Leah's throat worked. She opened her mouth but no words came. Mia's voice cut through instead, small but clear. Excuse me. Every head turned. Mia swung her legs, looking straight at Julian. Do you know my mommy works all night sometimes? She asked. And even when she's super tired, she still wakes up early to make me pancakes and braid my hair. The room went utterly still. She says we're gonna have a better life, Mia went on. That sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. My mommy's the bravest person I know. Leah's eyes burned. She turned stunned to stare at her daughter. Julian watched Mia, motionless. Something shifted in his gaze, less surprise than a deep aching recognition. A memory surfaced unbidden. A quiet boy in foster care, watching his mother walk away. Years of believing no one like Leah existed. He exhaled slowly and turned back to Leah. What would your previous employers say about your character? He asked, his tone gentler now. Leah cleared her throat, forcing her voice steady. They'd say I'm dependable. I learn quickly. I ask questions when I don't know something. And I don't miss shifts. Julian looked down at her resume for a long moment, then closed the folder with a soft snap. I think, he said quietly, we may have just found the right person. Leah blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. I'm sorry. He met her eyes and, for the first time that morning, smiled. Not a distant corporate smile but something warm. You're hired, Miss Monroe. Her mouth fell open then closed again. She looked at Mia, who clapped her hands, rabbit and all. Thank you, Leah managed, voice breaking. Thank you so much. HR sat in strained silence. One cleared their throat, but Julian was already rising, effectively ending the interview. We'll begin onboarding this afternoon, he said. On unsteady legs, Leah stood. Mia ran to hug her waist, beaming. As they left the room, Julian watched them go, face controlled, but something fundamental had shifted behind his eyes. Leah started her new job quietly and determinedly. She arrived 15 minutes early every morning, even if it meant pulling Mia out of bed in the pre-dawn dark. Her desk was tidy, her files in order, notes neatly color-coded. She asked questions, listened more than she spoke, and stayed late when needed. People noticed, not because she tried to stand out but because she showed up, did the work, and cared. Still, she kept her head down. The last thing she wanted was special attention from the CEO, who had once driven her to the building. Julian remained the composed, almost enigmatic leader the company had been buzzing about. He moved through the halls with practiced ease, greeted employees by name, and carried authority without arrogance. Kind but reserved, distant yet attentive. Yet sometimes he lingered near Leah's desk a moment longer than necessary. Now and then his eyes found hers during meetings. When she glanced away, the corner of his mouth would twitch like he was fighting a smile. Most mornings, Leah stopped at the same small cafe near the office. Moss green tiles, a chalkboard menu, the smell of fresh coffee. She ordered the same thing every time. A medium, 1 sugar, no cream. One day, she reached for her wallet and the barista grinned. It's taken care of. Sorry, Leah asked. The barista jerked his chin toward the door, where Julian was just stepping out, dark coat slung over one shoulder, coffee in hand. He didn't look back, but his pace slowed, as if he were waiting for her to notice. The next morning, Leah arrived earlier, intending to pay his tab in return. He still beat her to it. A quiet game began. No words, just gestures. Coffee already paid for. An extra pastry accidentally left on her desk. A note from reception about her bus fare being reimbursed under a new internal transport policy. That, as far as anyone knew, didn't exist anywhere but Julian's head. One rushed Tuesday morning, a babysitter canceled at the last minute, and Leah had to bring Mia in briefly before school. As they hurried across the wet sidewalk, Mia caught her toe on a loose shoelace and stumbled, scraping her knee. Before Leah could kneel, someone else had. Julian crouched on the concrete in his tailored suit, unbothered by the damp pavement, gently tying the laces on Mia's pink sneakers. There, he said, standing. Good as new. Mia looked up at him with shining eyes. Thank you, Mr. Uberman. Julian's mouth curved. Anytime, sweetheart. Leia's heart stuttered in an unfamiliar way. She opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, but he was already walking away. That Friday, the community committee hosted a Bring Your Family to Work hour. Leia hesitated, memories of lobby stairs still fresh, but Mia's excitement won. While Leia typed up a report, Mia sat in the corner with crayons and a sketchpad, humming softly as she drew. She stayed quiet and focused, occasionally glancing up at her mother with adoration. Just before they left, Mia darted down the hall, stopped at Julian's office and knocked twice. When the door opened, she stood there beaming. This is for you, she said, holding out a folded paper. I drew you. Julian crouched to take it. Inside was a crayon picture. A big black car, Leia in the back seat, Mia in the middle with stars around her head, and him in the front. At the bottom in red she'd written, "The nice Uberman who helped my mom." He stared at it for a long quiet moment, then folded it carefully. Crossing to his desk, he opened the top drawer, the one that usually held high-value contracts and confidential agreements, and placed the drawing inside. His assistant, watching from the doorway, raised an eyebrow. You don't usually keep crayon masterpieces next to signed mergers. Julian looked at the closed drawer, then out the window. Some people, he said softly, almost to himself, don't need to knock on a door to walk into your life. From then on, Leia felt the change. In meetings, his gaze softened when she spoke. He never cut her off. Amid deadlines and chaos, he glanced toward her just to make sure she was all right. Leia noticed. And it frightened her because no one had ever looked at her like that, and because she wasn't sure a man like him could truly mean it. Rain hammered the city one night, turning the skyline into blurred streaks of gray and silver. It wasn't a drizzle but a hard, soaking downpour that seeped through coats and made the sidewalks shine. By early evening, most of the office had emptied. A few conference rooms glowed with late meetings. Somewhere a lone keyboard clacked. Leia sat at her desk, hunched over a complicated spreadsheet she'd been asked to fix before morning. She hadn't planned on staying late. Her phone buzzed. A text from the babysitter. Sorry, can't make it. Emergency. Leia shut her eyes briefly. She didn't have many options. In the end, she'd brought Mia along, set her up with snacks and a sketchpad in the quiet lobby, promising it would just be for a little while. Then came another buzz. Mia's outside. It's cold and raining. Is someone coming for her? It was from the security guard. Leia shot to her feet so fast her chair toppled. Heart in her throat, she sprinted down the hall, nearly slipping, stabbed the elevator button, and wrote it down with clenched fists. Through the tall lobby windows, she spotted a small figure near the edge of the overhang. Mia's pink dress was already dark with moisture. She hugged herself, staring up at the storm, lips trembling. Someone stood beside her. Julian. He held his coat stretched over Mia like a shield, letting the rain soak his own hair and shoulders. Leia burst through the doors. I'm so sorry, she gasped, rushing to them. She wasn't supposed to be outside. I didn't think it would rain this hard. She's okay, Julian said calmly. Cold but okay. He wrapped his coat more securely around Mia, then looked at Leia with quiet understanding. Come on, he said softly. Let me drive you both home. I can call a cab, she protested weakly. You don't need to worry about that right now, he replied, leaving no room for argument. Too shaken to fight it, she nodded. They drove through the rain in near silence, wipers beating a steady rhythm. Julian checked the rearview mirror now and then, watching Mia bundled in the back seat, drowsy under his coat. But instead of her rundown motel, he turned down a tree-lined residential street, porch lights glowing in the drizzle. Leia frowned. This isn't. You both need to warm up, he said, pulling into a driveway. And eat. She hesitated. Just for a little while, he added, more vulnerable than she'd ever heard him. Please. Something in his voice made her nod. Inside, his house was modern but comfortable. Books lined shelves along the walls. A fireplace waited unlit. The air carried a hint of cedar and coffee. He handed Leia a towel and found an oversized sweatshirt for Mia, which hung almost to her ankles. Dinner was grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple, warm, perfect. Later, with Mia asleep on the couch under a blanket, Leia and Julian sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea between them. "I'm sorry you keep having to pick up the pieces of my chaos," she said quietly, staring into her cup. "You don't need to apologize for being a mother," he replied. Silence stretched comfortably for a few seconds, rain softening against the windows. "I grew up in foster care," Julian said finally. "Never met my parents. Bounced from house to house. I was the quiet kid. People assumed quiet meant cold. Eventually they stopped trying." Leia didn't interrupt. She let the words settle. "I loved someone once," he continued. "Back when I was building my first company. She said she loved me too. When money got tight, so did her patience. She left. And then?" Leia asked softly. "Years later, after everything took off, she came back." He gave a humorless smile. Her gaze warmed with understanding. "Since then," Julian said, "I've struggled to believe in love that isn't conditional." He lifted his eyes to hers. "But Mia looks at you like you're her whole world. And you look at her like you'd give all of this up to keep her safe." Leia's throat tightened. "That's not a transaction," he said quietly. "That's love." They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to. In the hush of his kitchen, with rain whispering outside and a little girl snoring softly on the couch, something unspoken passed between them. Not quite a promise. More than friendship. Something that didn't need words yet. The whisper started small. "She's the one he's always talking to. I saw him bring her coffee last week. Well, she did bring her kid to the office. Sympathy card, anyone. Single moms can be persuasive." At first it was just a feeling, half-heard murmurs in the break room, conversations that died when Leia walked in, sideways looks in the hallway. She told herself she was imagining it. Then one morning in the elevator, two women fell silent as she stepped inside. One, a junior executive with knives for cheekbones and ambition to match, smirked openly. "I guess sleeping with the CEO has its perks," she muttered, not bothering to lower her voice. Heat crawled up Leia's neck. She stared at the floor, saying nothing. Her silence didn't matter. The damage was done. By Friday, gossip had crawled all the way to HR. They called Leia into a closed-door meeting. Two HR representatives sat across from her, folders open. A legal advisor quietly took notes at the side. "We've received multiple reports alleging an inappropriate relationship between you and Mr. Hartwell," one HR rep said. Eyes on her papers, not on Leia. Leia's stomach dropped. "That's not true," she said, voice shaking. "I haven't done anything wrong." "We're not accusing you of misconduct," the woman replied smoothly. "However, given your position and recent events, particularly your presence at Mr. Hartwell's residence after hours, this puts the company in a delicate position. We have to consider perception. Not truth. Not facts. Perception." Julian was not there. Leia had no idea if he even knew the meeting was happening. When they dismissed her, she walked back to her desk in a numb haze. She moved carefully, methodically, packing her things into her tote. Her mug. A few notes. A child's drawing where Mia had written "Best Mom Ever" in red marker. She knew what she had to do. By the time Julian found out, her resignation was already filed. He stormed into HR, voice sharp and controlled, demanding the complaint file. The moment he saw the name of the woman who had started the rumor, he had her escorted out of the building before lunch. But it was too late. He called Leia. No answer. He emailed. Silence. He went to her desk. Empty. Hours later, pushing through Saturday traffic, Julian finally arrived at the small motel behind the gas station. Room 6B. The door stood wide open. A cleaning cart blocked the doorway. "She checked out this morning," the manager said with a shrug. "Didn't say where she was going. Paid cash." Julian stood in the open doorway, hands in his pockets, staring into the stripped room. The bed was bare. The nightstand empty. No pink dress tossed over a chair. No golden stuffed rabbit. No faint lavender scent from Leia's shampoo. Nothing. As if no one had ever lived there at all. He took a slow breath and stepped back. Outside, the rain had started again, light at first, then heavier. This time he didn't seem to notice. The street was crowded for a Saturday. Early autumn wind stirring leaves along the sidewalk, people weaving between small shops and cafes. Julian walked with a coffee in hand, thoughts far away. He rarely came to this part of town. Today something had pulled him here anyway. He passed a little bookstore with bright posters taped inside the windows. That's when he saw her. A small girl stood just outside the entrance, pink dress rumpled, cheeks streaked with tears. Her hands twisted nervously in the hem of her sweater as her eyes scanned the crowd, terrified. Strangers walked past, oblivious. Julian froze. "Mia," he called softly. She turned at the sound of her name. The moment she recognized him, her face crumpled with relief. "Mr. Uberman," she sobbed, running straight to him. Julian dropped to his knees and caught her as she flung herself into his arms. He held her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapping around her shaking shoulders. "I got lost," she hiccuped. "There were too many people and I couldn't find Mommy." "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe. I've got you." He looked around, pulse racing. "Let's go somewhere warm, all right?" He carried her down the block to a quiet cafe, settled her at a corner table on his lap, ordered hot chocolate, and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. He stroked her hair gently. "She'll come," he said softly. "Your mom's already looking for you." And she was. Leia ran through the streets like a woman on fire, shoving through crowds, breath ragged with panic. She'd only turned away for a second in the bookstore. 1 second, and Mia had vanished. She rounded the corner and saw them through the cafe window, her daughter swaddled in a blanket on Julian's lap. Leia burst through the door. Julian stood up just as she reached the table, but before he could say a word, she was on her knees, arms flung around Mia. I'm here," she whispered, voice splintering. "Oh baby, I'm right here." Mia buried her face in her mother's neck, both of them shaking. Julian stepped back, giving them space. When Leia finally looked up, her tear-streaked eyes found his. For a moment she couldn't speak. Julian moved a step closer and knelt beside her. "You once mistook me for your driver," he said quietly. "But I've never once mistaken you for anything less than extraordinary." Leia blinked, stunned. "You are the strongest person I've ever met," he went on. "The way you fight for her. The way you carry everything alone. You never ask for help, but you deserve it. You deserve everything." His voice dropped even softer. "I spent years building a life I thought would make me feel whole," he said. "It didn't. Not really. Not until I met you." He glanced at Mia, then back at Leia. "I didn't need more success," he said. "I needed something to come home to." He held her gaze. "I needed you." Leia's face crumpled again, but this time from something other than fear. Without speaking, she reached for him. Julian wrapped an arm around her shoulders and another around Mia, drawing them both in. They held on, to each other, to the moment that finally made sense. 3 hearts knit together in a quiet corner cafe, at the beginning of something real. The lobby felt different the next time Leia walked through it. The marble floors were the same. The art hadn't changed. But she wasn't a nervous applicant anymore, clutching a thin resume. She was Leia Monroe, newly appointed director of the Single Parent Support Initiative, a groundbreaking program championed by the CEO himself. Her heels clicked with calm confidence as she crossed the lobby. Mia skipped alongside her, wearing her favorite pink dress and proudly displaying her laminated, honorary office citizen badge. Employees waved as she passed. Some slipped her candies. Others took a minute at lunch to doodle with her. Morning sunshine, they called her now. And in a way no one could quite explain, the whole office felt lighter since Leia and Mia had returned. From the glass balcony above, Julian watched them, arms folded loosely. A quiet smile tugged at his lips. He never made a show of it, but his presence near them was undeniable now, protective, steady, deeply personal. That evening, the company held its annual anniversary gala. The atrium shimmered under warm string lights. Music drifted through clinking glasses and soft laughter. Speeches were made, awards handed out. Then it was Julian's turn. He stepped onto the small stage, adjusting the microphone. The crowd settled. "I want to tell you a story," he began, eyes scanning the room until they found Leia. "About how the smallest, most unexpected moment can change everything." He paused. "Once," he said, "someone mistook me for their Uber driver. She slid into my car without hesitation, trusting a stranger not just with herself, but with the most precious person in her world, her daughter. Soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. What she didn't know, Julian continued, voice deepening, was that in that moment, she was the one rescuing me. The room hushed. She reminded me what it means to fight quietly, to love fiercely, and to believe that sometimes the detours in life lead us exactly where we're meant to go. Then he turned fully to Leia, and the atmosphere shifted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps and delighted murmurs swept the room. "Leia Monroe," he said, voice steady but full, "would you and your tiny partner in crime allow me to be part of your journey from here on out?" Mia, practically glowing, trotted up the steps in her pink dress and handed him the ring box with both hands, as if it were treasure. Leia covered her mouth, tears spilling over, already nodding before sound found her. "Yes," she whispered again and again. "Yes." Applause thundered through the atrium, but for the three of them, the world had shrunk around the stage. It was just them, one small family finally choosing each other. Later, after the gala had wound down and the lights dimmed, Julian, Leia, and Mia walked hand in hand through a quiet park. The sky blushed with the last colors of sunset. Fireflies winked in the grass. Mia skipped ahead, chasing the tiny lights. Julian gently drew Leia closer. "You didn't just step into the wrong car that day," he murmured. She smiled, eyes shining. "You stepped into the right life," he finished. Under the amber sky, their three shadows stretched together across the grass. Sometimes a wrong turn, a wrong car, a wrong assumption leads you exactly where you were meant to be. Thank you for sharing this journey of love, resilience, and second chances. If Leia and Julian's story made you smile, stirred your heart, or brought a tear to your eye, consider subscribing and tapping the like button to support the Soul Stirring Stories channel. We share emotional, real-life, inspired tales that heal, inspire, and highlight the quiet beauty in everyday moments. Your support helps us keep bringing stories that truly touch the soul. Until next time, stay kind and remember, sometimes the route you never planned takes you exactly where you belong.